This is E3 Digital, a curatorial practice documenting the artists, artifacts, and ideas inscribed on Bitcoin. Today's conversation is with MDV, a full stack engineer, generative artist, and one of the early builders in the Ordinals ecosystem. His work sits at the intersection of code, art, and Bitcoin native infrastructure. From fully on-chain generative collections to immersive 3D environments like BlockForge, a persistent voxel world that lives entirely on Bitcoin. This conversation is about digital permanence, computational creativity, and what becomes possible when Bitcoin is treated not just as a ledger, but as a creative substrate. MDV, welcome to E3 Digital.
Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on.
It is our honor, my honor. Thank you for agreeing. I've been very excited. It's been, in my feelings, a long time coming just because I've been so eager to talk to you. But I want to jump right into it. We're going to start with talking about sort of your origins. You describe yourself as a full stack engineer, generative artist, and Ordinals pioneer. Which identity came first?
Definitely the engineering part. I can go into a bit of my background. I
Please.
was working at an insurance company and doing essentially back-end data processing and claim validation for a couple of years, and then COVID hit, and I got laid off, like a lot of people did. And I eventually found a new job working in special education, doing IT and also programming and a lot of infrastructure for an educational startup. And some of the kids there were really interested in trying in like coding art and expressing themselves via code, and they specifically really wanted to make 3D worlds and 3D interactable things and characters. And we looked into Unity for a little bit, but um, I had a session in which I worked with a kid on 3JS, and they really enjoyed it, and it really clicked with them. And I sort of started working that more into my sessions with kids. And so I had been using 3JS for a while. At the time, it was pretty niche. Like not many people talked about it. And then I had also been just sort of like as a hobby, kind of interested in crypto, doing a little bit of trading and following NFTs and art. And I was very interested in ordinals right at the very beginning, and was there in the very early days with the spreadsheets and stuff. And after I saw On-Chain Monkey doing 3D art that was using 3JS, it made me realize, oh, this is like a very unique opportunity for this like very specific skill set and interest that I've developed to kind of converge with another interest and hobby of mine being crypto, and those kind of melded together. And that pushed me to start making art. And so I launched my first collection, which is BTC Substance, kind of marrying those two things together. And yeah, and from then it's just been following the space, trying to be more creative, come up with more interesting ways to utilize the 3D worlds, trying to push the limits, all that.
I'm not a technical person, but I have been in the ordinal space long enough to see people talk about 3JS. I have to imagine there'll be other listeners similar to me. Could you maybe talk about what is it about 3JS that really stands out or makes it a good tool for you as a builder and as an artist?
Yeah. Well, 3JS, it's probably the most important thing about it in the context of Bitcoin is that it is really small as a file size. It's really adaptable. It can make and do almost anything, and it's natively supported on all devices and browsers. So, I mean, there's a lot of ways to render in 3D. There's a whole bunch of different ways, and a lot of them don't have quite that trifecta of things. They'll either be a much heavier file size, they'll be only natively work on certain devices, they will require an install, or they'll be like a Unity game that you have to actually download and play on your own device. But the special thing about 3JS is that anyone who has a link can just open it, and it'll show up on their phone, it'll show up on their computer, it'll show up on their Apple Vision Pro, it'll show up on their TV, and really anywhere you can access the internet. So that plus the small file size really makes it make a lot of sense given the like ordinals constraints where file size is so important.
Before Ordinals, were you already thinking about digital creation as an artistic practice, or did Bitcoin unlock that for you?
I would say Bitcoin mostly unlocked that for me. I have always been very interested in coding and I was always very technical and I always enjoyed solving problems. And I'm a musician in my the rest of my life, my more in person life. So I have like artistic sensibilities, but those things never quite crossed over. And then I think once I started creating with Bitcoin, it really like unlocked something in my head this like desire to visualize something and then make it come to life, like no matter what the technical barriers are.
This, I guess maybe this is your musical background, but a lot of artists begin with image making. Your work feels more systems oriented. What originally drew you towards building computational experiences instead of static visual objects?
It's a good question. I think probably it's that I'm not very good at drawing, never have been, and I tend to think about things in a more like logical, mathematical sense.
Hmm.
So if I can just like have something as simple as like a trig algorithm or like a simple like sine cosine equation, and have that be actualized into something visual, and that's what shaders do. That's what 3JS lets you do. GLSL. Um, that is very interesting to me. It's like this one simple equation can make such an interesting, awesome thing appear on the screen. That really like that's I guess the form of creation and the medium that speaks to me the most.
You kind of briefly passed through, at least in my mind, but admittedly, I was trying to share some things on Twitter, and so I might have missed it.
It's all
But
good.
when you first encountered ordinals, I think you expressed that your interaction with ordinals as an art medium, and building on it kind of came from you being a teacher. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. And
S-
that some
s-
of the kids I worked with wanted to make 3D art. So, and I knew 3JS, and it all kind of mixed together.
How did you first encounter ordinals? And aside from your, sort of the teaching that led you to start tampering, what was it about ordinals that made you think, hey, I could build here?
I do think it was something about being present for the very, very beginning of something. I just happened to find myself. I think it was through some connections I had. I happened to find the right links, the right posts. But being around as like a community and a medium was getting born was really exciting, and it was changing every day. And what was possible was constantly changing, and like the landscape was changing, and that was really exhilarating. It was the first time I'd ever been around or been part for something like that. That and then also, like I said, seeing On Chain Monkey put out their first 3D collection, that was a complete mental shift because up until then I'd mostly seen ordinals as a way to store really, really, really small files and images, and that was like mostly what it could do. But then like shifting my brain to being like, okay, so now the constraints are small file size. How can you make the biggest, most immersive thing possible and work around those constraints? And then that just like got my brain running.
I want to shift now to talking a little bit about code as a creative medium. Do you think code, or do you think of code the way traditional artists think about materials such as paint, clay, and film, or is that analogy too simplistic?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's pretty similar. And there's a lot of different ways that different creative code artists can put their own style into what they do. So it's similar to like a more physical medium, where the same two artists may have the same paint but make something completely different. And I think that's also true with code. I think
When
the way you write code, the libraries you use, and like your tendencies all come out in the art.
that segues perfectly to my next question, which is about, when you're building something like BlockForge, or really any of your experiences, where does the authorship actually live? Is it in the code? Is it in the systems? Is it in the rules? Or is it in the final experience?
What do you mean by authorship? Like which part of it? is from me or is from the user.
E- which part of it? What I mean is like which part of it is your creative expression, and then which part of it is the projection to the viewer, the part that you feel like is the biggest expression of your creative energies.
That makes sense. I think BlockForge is an interesting example because it is a huge technical system. So there's one large component of making it that is just building code that works, having the infrastructure be sound, and solving purely technical questions and jumping through those hoops, which is does not feel really like an artistic expression. And then I think the artistic expression comes into a lot of the stylistic choices. How does the world feel? How do the colors interact? Um, what like how do the creatures interact and what kinds of creatures and how are they rendered? Is it playful? Is it serious? Is it gritty? Is it realistic? Um, and I think that was that side of things would be more where my like artistic sensibilities came out, like crafting the experience in how you would perceive it artistically. So yeah, it's two pieces. It's like making the tech work and solving problems, and then also making like an aesthetic experience. Does that make sense?
It does, and I guess to that sense, does it almost feel like you're discovering like Blockforge as it's being built, or is it more almost like outlining like a book? Does that make sense?
It does, yeah, and it's definitely the first one. It's definitely, and the way my creative process always works is I have like kind of a harebrained idea, and then I just see, I think, is this possible, and then I make a like a simple minimum viable product, and then from there, that sort of inspires what the next direction is going to be. So it's I feel like it's constantly like a shifting, moving path, and I'm following what makes the most sense. And whether that's I spend the next week like fixing bugs and doing pure technical stuff and trying to expand the technical scope, or if it's okay, now it's time to like add in some stylistic, artistic things. What does the code and the art need? Yeah, I feel like it's discovered as I'm going for sure.
One thing I've been thinking about over the past couple months is sort of the difference or maybe the intersection between like artist and architect and sort of software engineer. I'm thinking specifically, I don't know if you're familiar with an artist by the name of Zero X Far.
Hmm.
He tweeted recently, maybe about 3 months ago, something basically saying that I forgot the exact term he used, but like software engineers are almost becoming like a new form of artist in this era. Does that resonate with you, or do you see yourself more as an artist, or more as an architect, or something different?
It's a really interesting question. I think it is really true that software engineers are crossing that barrier, or they have the potential to, in a way that was a lot harder before. I do think graphics coding was a lot more niche until it has become recently. Like, there's always been people on message boards who were building really complicated shader code that was doing some really crazy stuff. There has been a niche that's existed for a long time, but yeah, that barrier is a lot thinner now. And yeah, do I consider myself an artist? I guess yes. I mean, I definitely do. But more like a builder probably makes more sense
Hmm.
because what I'm doing when I'm working on the piece day to day, it's more like I'm building than I'm like painting, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah, and this isn't like a fully fleshed out thought in my mind, but I'm interested to bounce it off of you and see what you think. I see sort of we've been living in this digital era, and Bitcoin creates or comes along and creates sort of digital scarcity and the ability to have like ownership in a way that you couldn't previously in the digital world. And so it seems to me like there was always digital and creative artists, but now not only just sort of the I guess what am I trying to say? Do you think that people who are building and creating in this space, including yourself, do you think that the rest of the world doesn't understand the artistry that is involved in actually developing the final products that yourself and many other in talented software developers, software architects, engineers are building in this space? I don't know if that was a really good question, but hopefully you get
No,
where
no,
I'm
it makes
trying to
sense.
go. Okay.
Yeah, uh, yeah, I think. hmm. So saying the rest of the world doesn't understand, I totally see what you're getting at there, and I think it is very complex and a little bit obtuse. Um, what makes ordinals interesting and why someone should care about a piece of art that's fully on chain, why that should matter, what are the implications of that? I think that's like we live in this space, so we think about that all the time, and we've like formed our opinions on it, and it means what it means to us. But I think it's hard to communicate, and the messaging is difficult, and I think it's taking a while to permeate out into public consciousness. And there's also the connotations that a lot of the world has with like the phrase NFT and that kind of thing. So I think it's
and,
hard and it's slow, but it's happening, if that makes sense.
and it also takes a skill, in my opinion, that, if we were to compare it to, I guess, maybe the Renaissance sculptors, like not everyone could just grab a piece of marble and start chiseling away and create something beautiful. Like not everyone can just pull up a Visual Studio Code and a command line and create something and put it on Bitcoin and have something that's actually beautiful. Do you get what I'm saying? It's like a niche skill set that I feel like most people don't even understand how much creative energy and skill goes into it. Like the 99%.
I think it is getting easier. I mean, with the advent of coding tools like Cloud Code and stuff, I think it is a lot. The barriers of entry are lower, so a person who doesn't have a deep understanding of code can create something, and that unlocks, I think, some interesting new layers where some of the artistry and some of the skill has moved away from like deep technical knowledge and towards having the ideas and having the visions.
Mm.
It's still you still definitely do need to understand a lot of exactly how ordinals interact and understand the code pretty deeply. Like it still hasn't removed that layer, but it's opened the gates a little bit, which I think is cool. So it's technical ability plus idea having plus follow through and visualization. Yeah, it's a whole mix of things.
We're gonna jump now to kind of talking about why Bitcoin specifically before we move on to discussing BlockForge more in detail. I guess I'm going to put the question like this: why Bitcoin specifically for you instead of blockchain or any other blockchain generally?
Yeah, yeah. I think the specific for me is the constraints inform the art, which I think is a unique thing about Bitcoin. And there are ways to do fully on-chain art on other chains, but I think the the majority of other NFTs are a link to something. They're a link to a IPFS instance or something in AWS, which I don't think that's bad. I think that it's still there's so much beautiful art that is being stored that way, and then that puts more of the highlight on the art itself as opposed to the technical structure. But for me, as a person who thinks very technically and sees the challenge of okay, given file size constraint, how can I make something as immersive as possible? That is a very like addicting and very exciting challenge. So for me, it's all of those things and how they line up together and the potential possibilities that recursion gives and how it's and for all of the art that's been put on Bitcoin so far, I think it's clear that the constraints inform the art and inspire the art.
I love that. The constraints inform the art. Is not being a technical person, this may be a silly question, but is there anything that Bitcoin allows conceptually that other like substrates don't or other chains don't?
Yeah, yeah. See, I'm not extremely familiar with Solidity and with Ethereum and Solana, so I don't want to speak incorrectly on this. There probably are workarounds and ways to do a lot of the things Bitcoin does on other chains. But with Bitcoin, the way the relationship that inscriptions can have to each other. So you have parent child, you have reinscriptions, you have recursive submodules. That can build a really beautiful, interesting web where it's sort of like you're composing a piece of art from the ground up by putting these different, it's like you're combining these different chunks of clay together almost. You're putting the base libraries that are required, and then you're putting like one layer of the engine, and then on top of that you can inscribe more details and more finishing touches, more unique things. It's very composed, as opposed to like building one huge engine or one huge art algorithm and deploying it as a single contract. So I think that for sure, the composability is big on Bitcoin, and also the way it can easily like reference its own chain data. So information about a block, information about the inscription itself, like who owns it, what happened on the block that it was created. It feels like the art that you can make and the resources, the palette you have to pull from is all interesting, like native Bitcoin data. So it's very self-referential.
I've seen on your website and in your tweets, you are often emphasizing things like fully on chain, no servers, no dependencies, permanence. Is that a philosophical commitment?
That's a good question. I don't think it's a hard philosophical commitment. And there are, in order for the live multiplayer to work, that is like in BlockForge, that is technically utilizing not on-chain things. It's using WebRTC so the browsers can communicate. If a purist on-chain stance wouldn't allow you to have multiplayer, but I think the permanence is a bit of a philosophical standpoint for me, and I think that's what makes Ordinals beautiful. Is that as long as Bitcoin exists, then all of this stuff will exist. Like the good, the bad, everything interesting, every idea that anyone's ever had. It's all going to exist in this permanent form on the most secure blockchain.
How does the permanence as like this hard constraint, how much does that influence your creative design process?
It kind of, so there are things on Bitcoin that have to be permanent, and there also are ways to have it not be permanent. This is, I guess, a bit of its own debate within the community. But in order to make the world continue, like able to grow continually, I'm actually using some of that structure I was talking about before with reinscription, so that I can continue to change the code. So in that sense, something like BlockForge, I think, is too large and complicated for it to actually function if it's purely immutable, because I need to be able to make small updates to fix things like version compatibility, browser updates, security constraints, that kind of thing. So I think that there, for things that are purely artistic experiences, I think those probably should be immutable and permanent. But something that's a game that's interactive, I think benefits from the mutability as opposed to immutability that Bitcoin lets you do.
I want to turn now to discussing BlockForge, and before I do, maybe I can. Would you like to share your screen?
Sure.
And we
Can I do
pull up
entire window? Yeah.
BlockForge.
Is that sharing?
Give me 1 second. I have to. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I believe we are sharing now. Okay. Um, I'm going to give you an opportunity to sort of walk us through this and talk us through BlockForge. But before I do, at a high level, is BlockForge a game, an artwork, a social experiment, or something else?
Ooh. I think it's all three. It's
And
definitely a game, and I think it's a potential way for anyone in the community. It's like it's both a game and a medium because it allows any user in the community to build whatever they envision and to put it on chain. So if it sort of empowers people who aren't technical and don't necessarily want to learn all of the rules and the behind the scenes stuff to make ordinals work, it lets them build something with like a pretty easy to understand, um, ubiquitous control set and artistic medium. So in that sense, it's a game, and it's also an art piece in that there was a lot of aesthetic and design and appearance decisions that were made by me. So experiencing the world right now, we're having this like flyover, and so you can kind of see a lot of choices that I made in terms of how it looks, how the colors render, how it feels, the kinds of creatures and the kinds of biomes. That's also an art piece for sure.
Would you like to jump inside of BlockForge and maybe walk us through some of what we're seeing, and then I could also subsequently ask some questions maybe as we go. But okay,
Sure.
so you've just clicked. The first thing that popped up was kind of that menu, but what are we
Yeah.
seeing now?
So yeah, right now we are looking directly at a new block happened. That's cool. We're looking at ordinals.com, and we are inside a fully rendered voxel world, which is what BlockForge is. So everything you're seeing is built from an on-chain engine, and that this is a world of 1,000 chunks, and each chunk
And
is 32 by 32 blocks, and they're
you
each
mean,
their own. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, just because I'm not technical, an on-chain
Sure.
engine. I guess what does that mean for? How would you explain it to the non-technical?
Sure. So, if you were to imagine a common online multiplayer game, the way that works is the game itself and all of its source files, they are going to live somewhere on a server. And so, when you're playing any like browser multiplayer game, the server is sending you all that code, and it's stored somewhere over there. And then, whenever changes happen, you're sending information back to their server, and they're storing it in the database. So this would be something like traditional Minecraft or Roblox or Fortnite, anything like that. It's a sort of a server client relationship where it's your computer communicating with the server and back. And what I think what makes this interesting and impressive and technologically cool is that the actual game that we're playing is just a 800 kilobyte HTML file that was inscribed on Bitcoin, just like any other inscription, any picture or anything. And so that it's one single 800 kilobyte file that is pulling in a whole bunch of dependencies to make this happen and to render, and then it's just rendering natively within my browser.
And when it's pulling in those dependencies, are those dependencies coming from Bitcoin?
Yeah. hmm So I think I have. I don't know if I have something about that in here. I might have. I think I had a tweet about it, but let's see if I can find it. There, it does a whole bunch of recursive calls when it loads, and here. So this is explaining when you actually load that page, what is it doing? How is it gathering all the information it needs to render? So let's see if I can make this a little. It doesn't want me to open image in new tab. So it's doing 182 network requests, and that's pulling in a bunch of other libraries that were inscribed, some by me, some by other people, to get the 3D and the post processing and all of that to work. And so the file itself, the main file, is only 800 kilobytes, but all of the data that it pulls in to get the game to work is more like 5 megabytes, which is still very small compared to any like mainstream AAA game. And it's using all of these different recursive endpoints to gather that data. So it's using the content. It's also getting information about the blockchain state. It's using parent-child trees, metadata, and yeah.
Okay. And so I'm still, and again, you'll have to pardon my technical.
No, it's confusing, and I'm living in my own technical brain. No worries.
So one thing that happened early on, and I have you and the world back in the screen, but when you first jumped into BlockForge, you knew that a block had just been mined. What was it that
Yeah,
happened in the world that let you know that?
sure. So the game is reactive to the Bitcoin blockchain and how long it's been since the last block, and also what the block height is. So the day-night cycle, you'll see over here. You can see the moon. That says the block number that it currently is, which is 951,616. And over time, this over the course of the 10-minute block, this moon will actually rise all the way overhead and then go all the way down and set. And then as soon as the next block happens, it'll switch to day. So I can simulate that if you wanted to see what that would look like. So I'm overwriting it right now just for demonstration purposes, but this is what naturally happens throughout the course of the day. And then I also have an ability I can randomly set it to be a different block, which essentially picks a random block and pulls in that information, because it's not just the time of day that changes. It's also the weather, so the density of the clouds, and if it's raining or not. It also impacts the behavior of the creatures, if they're more or less aggressive. All of that comes from information on the last block. So every time a new block happens, there's a number of transactions that happened that block that we know. There was an average fee rate, and all of that is used in real time to inform the game state.
And so if I was in the game right now as well, the blocks would be impacting me the same way it's impacting anyone else
Yep.
who's in the game.
Mm-hmm.
If I were to start, building something on my plot, I actually own plot 8, -8. Um, and if I were
Let's
to
go
start
there.
building something, yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. So I have not done much on my plot, admittedly, as you can probably tell. But to someone who's viewing the game, they probably can't tell. Why is that?
That they can't tell that you haven't done much.
Yes. Can you tell that I haven't done anything?
Oh yeah, definitely. There's a couple ways. First off, because in the corner here, this might be hard to see. I can make this bigger. It just shows your wallet here, as opposed to, let's go to a chunk that has a build on it. Not sure which chunk I want to highlight here, but let's see. Doesn't really matter, I guess. But so I can go to a chunk here, and then in the corner it'll say this was made by NodeZ, instead of just having their sorry if that is hard to see. That has the name, and so you can see that.
Where's your mouse at?
Oh, it's in the bottom left, right below Biome Tundra.
See.
It says
Yeah.
NodeZ. Yeah, so that's the author. When they made their changes and they inscribed them, they chose that they input their name too, and so now that is permanently on here. So I mean, you can tell that this was clearly a build that someone made, as opposed to like the default terrain, if that makes sense.
It does. And so on my plot, if you were to go onto my plot, could you start inscribing, or could you start building on it, and then inscribe it and save it, or no, because that's my plot?
Because it's your plot. So I could build on it. I could make changes, either adding or deleting, but those changes would be temporary. So I have a multiplayer relay that stores all changes for up to 72 hours, which is to make it feel multiplayer, and also in case you lose a connection while you're working. But I would never be able to save it. And it's because I don't own this chunk. The way saving actually works is you do a parent-child inscription of all of your updates. And for parent-child, you need to own the parent being this piece itself, piece 8-8. So a friend could help you build. They could be in there real time, like helping you execute an idea. And then when it's time to actually inscribe the changes, you would have to do it. And that would be done through Wallet Connect.
That's really cool. That's actually really cool. Okay, I have other questions, but I do want to. Is there anything else that you'd like to show the viewers about BlockForge? I have more questions about BlockForge that are more philosophical in nature, but anything while we're still here in the game?
I do have one thing that is coming that I'll be announcing soon. It's there's so much to talk about in here. Like I have this blimp. It shows the lowest listings currently on marketplaces and what they're being sold for. I mean, there's like everything in here. There's 2 new features that I added recently.
Let me ask you a question. And so when you add something new, do you have to go to that? I think you said 800 kilobyte file that's inscribed. Like, how does that work? How does it work in terms of updating it?
So I edit the code locally on my own computer, and I test it against my local server and make sure that everything's good. And then I compress that file, and then I do what's called reinscribing. So that SAT that the engine lives on, I essentially just put a new inscription on there. Right now there's 17 because I'm on version 1.7. And that costs like $10, 10, $15. And then so I put a whole new version there. And then the next time anyone visits BlockForge, it'll automatically get the newest version of the code.
Now, does that SAT that BlockForge is inscribed on, does that live in your wallet, or where like?
Yeah.
Okay, because that's obviously okay. That's super interesting. And so,
If I were to want to make BlockForge permanent and unchangeable, and let's say I was done updating it and I wanted it to sort of retain, become immutable, then I would burn that. I would burn that
yeah,
those inscriptions on
okay,
that SAT, or I would send it to a burn wallet effectively, so then no one could change it. But right now, because I'm in active development, I've been putting out about a patch per week, full of a bunch of new content, which is usually it's new features, it's new block types, it's new creatures, it's new game types, yeah, and
let
all
me
of those things.
let me ask this. I've been interested in the idea of the metaverse for a while, and I guess, is this a form of a metaverse, or is that like almost like kind of too?
Yeah, it definitely is. It's anyone who owns a plot of land can build whatever they want, and they can equip a skin, and they can see other players in real life, in real time, and they can kind of hang out together. So I feel like it checks all the boxes of a metaverse. Something I'm excited to look into more is to add more assets that are tradable that impact the in-game experience. Which that's like kind of the next thing I wanted to announce, if that's cool. Unless you had more questions.
No, please. If you'd like to announce that, we're happy to have you do that here on E3
Sure.
Digital. Let me
This is
put
a
the
world
game
that
back on.
you get to um, present yourself and your identity and your artistic intent, and you get to make your trunk look whatever you want. But what if you can make yourself look like whatever you wanted to and express your identity there? So I'm adding in a collection of 100 skins that will be their own tradable ordinal as well as equipable in the game. So right now I have one equipped. It's this like sort of tundra wolf guy, and each piece will have, or each skin will have access to a secret block that only holders of that skin will have. This one is this cool frost cube that's animated. That's like the secret block that the skin gets. Um, and also each piece is its own ordinal that is a 3D viewable skin, like this. This is an example, and they all have their own emote. So the way it would work is you own one of these, and it's this itself is its own 3D world that is created. All of them are handcrafted one of ones that I built, and so you can trade this, and you can have this as your PFP if you wanted to. See, I'll view it in full screen. It has the ability to export a PFP, which is like a 500 by 500 pixel image designed for social media and stuff. So it gives you powers in the game. It lets you do your character's secret animation. This one is this like ghosty thing. You can do that in game for other players to see. Other players can see what you have equipped, and also you get a secret block that only owners can use. And there are 100 of them, and it will be launching soon.
That is awesome. I'm honored that you announced that here on E3 Digital. So
Yeah.
when is that intended to be released, and then how can people anticipate being able to acquire one of these skins?
It's going to launch on ord.net as soon as the launchpad is live, and I don't have a date on that. And that's pretty much all the
Okay,
information I'm giving out right now.
that's fair. Well, you heard it here first on E3 Digital, so thank you for that exclusive. Um, Let me ask you this: do you think of chunk ownership as ownership, or as like creative stewardship?
Ooh, creative stewardship. Um, Also, I can go ahead and stop sharing if you want to have both of us on screen again.
Yeah. Okay. Let me do that.
I think I shared my piece.
All right. Yeah,
So
because
do I think of chunk
so
ownership as, yeah, sorry, maybe repeat the
and
question.
here's the reason, here's the impetus for the question is like I bought a chunk just because I wanted to. Well, I think it might be my third piece of yours in my collection. It might be my second. I'll have to go back and check. I have a skull, but
Oh yeah.
when I saw this, I was like, oh, I have to get involved somehow. So I bought a chunk, and I haven't had time to build on my chunk yet, and so I started. But then a chunk next door to me went up for sale, and I almost bought it. I didn't really have the funds to do as such, but I thought about buying it. But then I was like, I don't want to be just trying to hoard chunks that I'm not building on, right? Because I feel like as a chunk owner, I felt a sense of responsibility, and so this is where the question comes from, which is like, do you see it as ownership or as creative stewardship?
Yeah, yeah. I think if you want to own a chunk, you can do it for multiple reasons. Maybe you want to acquire some land and like give yourself the opportunity to build something big when you have the time and the idea. So it's like kind of reserving that for your future self. Like once you have the idea come to you, then you can build it. Or once you have the time, I don't think there's any obligation to build on it at all. And I think my what I think is really cool about this is it's like a permissionless metaverse. There's no like central company running it. I can't prevent anyone from doing anything. I can't, if there's a build I don't like, I can't delete it, because it's all referring to the chain. And so my vision for this was I put this out in the world. It is a like decentralized, essentially unmanaged metaverse. And like from the second I unveil it, the community will decide what they do with it. What percentage of chunks actually get builds? And maybe people enjoy having a chunk that is like native and they don't want to build on it because they like want it to remain as it originally was. What are the trends? What kinds of things do people build? Which areas or which biomes are the most interesting to build on? That kind of thing. I wanted to let it like emerge naturally. So yeah, there's no obligation to do anything specific with it or not to.
Is there a way for you to expand in those in that engine that I might be messing this up, but that 800 kilobyte or megabyte engine that we discussed? Can you expand the chunks in the future, or could you maybe if could you edit that sat and reinscribe it in some way that if I did something on my chunk that you didn't like, you could make it go away?
Not really. The closest I could do would be like maybe if you used a certain block type, I could try to. Not really. I mean, not with the way that I've built the engine and the way that the recursive dependencies work. Um, because it's going to load the child inscriptions after it loads my code. So I would have to drastically change the game for it to like negatively impact anything. So largely no.
Let me ask this, and this may already be a feature, but let's say at some point in the future I wanted to like on my chunk have an art gallery of my ordinals that I own.
Yeah.
Is that something that is already possible, or something that may be possible in the future?
Oh yeah, it's totally possible. That's another thing that makes. I see a question in the chat that's like, how do you compare this project to Decentraland aside from not being on Bitcoin blockchain? I think one big point is that it's like decentralized and not arbitrated by any company, and it's like fully free use for what the community wants to build. And the second piece is that you have everything that's ever been inscribed um, as I guess your painting palette. So any image inscription or GIF inscription that's ever been put on chain, you can import that as a block and build with it. So um, if how hard would it be for me to share my screen quickly again?
No, not a problem at all. Go ahead and share.
um, this is one example. So this chunk is a art gallery of the Wizards of Ord. So it's this like big temple, and you go inside, and it's showing a bunch of different wizards all here. And these are all just exactly showing the image that's inscribed. So anyone could
Nice.
easily do this with whatever your collection is. So you could showcase a single collection. You could just showcase what you've collected over time, the different pieces that you have. And it's the my engine is smart enough to figure out the resolution of the pixel art and to render it smoothly within the context of BlockForge. So it'll like upsize or downsize and fix the color grading.
So are there like rarities to the different biomes or to the different? I mean, maybe this is something that the community will kind of decide for itself, right? I guess it's kind of a free market sort of thing, but um, is are there things that are seen maybe as more exclusive or more rare, or what are your thoughts there?
Yeah. Primary biome. There, I have this one trait. I'll make this so it's more visible. So the primary biome, that is what is most of your chunk taken up by. And so this has some natural rarity to it. And that has to do with the algorithm that I used, where it's applying certain biomes first, and then if there's a tie in which biome it should be, like certain ones will win. So I didn't design this naturally, but it turned out that there's only 28 that are primarily alien versus there's 224 that are primarily cyberpunk. So that is like a natural rarity curve that happened there. And there's also 8 pieces that are mega chunks. And so that means if you own that piece, you have, instead of the regular size plot, you have a 4x4 plot that you can build on. So it just gives you way more space. This is an example of a mega chunk that I did as a build giveaway. So this is 4 times as big as the standard land allotment. And I built this kraken inside a cage in here. And it has like a little house inside it. So it just lets you own a bigger piece that you can do one giant build at once. Now, anyone could technically collect uh, adjacent pieces, which I believe someone already did. Yeah, this is an example of someone collecting 2 adjacent pieces and making a build on 2 adjacent ones. So you could totally do that, but Mega Chunk just makes it a lot easier. And also, they have the natural rarity of only being 8 out of 1,000.
Okay. Um, Let me see. We're getting close to the end, and it has
Yeah,
definitely been a trend of, I always have more questions than what I'm able to get through. So let me start kind of moving through some of these
sure.
and
Okay, I
focus
can
on
stop
the
sharing
ones
again.
that. So BlockForge, Galactic Gravity, AR, VR work. Yeah, so I do own 3 of your pieces now that I'm in. Portals, caverns. Why space? Like, why worlds instead of images?
I mean, the straightforward answer is because it's not being explored as much as I think it should. It's not as many people are looking into the possibilities there. And I just noticed like this seems like it has potential and it's not being looked into as I think it can manage. So yeah, that's
Do,
why.
do you think that digital environments can carry the same artistic seriousness as traditional art objects?
Potentially. I think it's hard. I think it's harder to connect with something that is 3D because you can't perceive it all at once. You have to spend time exploring it, which makes it harder to form an opinion about it as opposed to just looking at an image. But I think as the world gets more online and tethered to the internet and spending more time watching videos and short form content and stuff, I think it's definitely feasible.
Projects like Gen Skulls and portraits touch identity more directly, and now your new avatars that you just. What is the name of the avatar project? I think you might have said it, but I missed it. Is
Yeah,
there
BlockForge identities. So
BlockForge
literally what,
identities?
yeah, literally what you were just saying.
Um, how do you think about avatars, PFPs, and digital self-representation?
I mean, I think the your avatar on the internet is who you are, and it's the short form of how people think of you. So the way it's expressed, both in like the really small size, if you're looking at someone's post on Twitter, and also if you're looking at their page, if you're looking at a video that they might be in, I think the colors, the visual language of it is all very important, and it is used in people's shorthand in their head of how they think of you. So I think it's really very important and powerful.
One thing that I've been thinking about with a lot of your works is that they don't feel to me, right, and this is just as the observer of the art, They don't feel like works as much as they feel like experiences. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah, definitely, and that's what I'm going for.
okay. Um, when I'm in that experience, and maybe it changes from each of your collections, but um, what is it that the observer is participating in? Very philosophical question.
I think I mean, it depends on what the experience is. I think there's some involvement of the author's intention there. Like, what do they want? Do they want you to be a passive onlooker, or do they want you to be an active participant and like mold the world? And I think between something like Galactic Gravity and BlockForge, Galactic Gravity is much more, you are quite literally a passenger in a roller coaster. And so you're perceiving what's around you. You have the autonomy to choose where you're looking, but that's like pretty much it versus something like BlockForge. That's like, as the viewer, you're also encouraged and expected to participate. So it's like a immersive. They're both immersive art, but one of them is immersive interactive.
I had some questions about AI tools and authorship, but we don't have time for those. So I'll get to my last couple questions here. Um, and hopefully in the future, as this continues to build, I can have you back on and maybe get some of these questions at another time. But we've talked a lot about permanence. What does it mean to create something that could theoretically outlive every platform built around it?
I think that's what makes Bitcoin beautiful to me. That's like why, that's like the core reason as to why I'm drawn to it, is that it will keep existing even if ordinals.com goes down. It'll all still exist within the Bitcoin metadata. Someone would just have to find it, and that will. I think Bitcoin will live way longer than any specific domain or website that's out right now. So I think it carries a little bit of weight to be intentional about what you put on it. Um, but also it's just an open canvas for everyone. So it's like a great equalizer in that sense.
I don't think I'm the first to make this analogy, but I'm interested. One thing I've been thinking about a lot is like, okay, well, there was cave inscriptions, right? And like people drew on the caves, and then I think, to me, one thing I noticed that I've been thinking about a lot recently is like maybe I think it was the '80s and '70s where graffiti art became a big thing, and one thing that I've been thinking about in regards to that is a lot of graffiti art existed on trains. I mean, I remember growing up and seeing the train and on subways and in locations where people would frequent, right? And these artists would sort of
Mm-hmm.
put their mark in a place where people would routinely pass by. And to me, what I've been thinking about is like Bitcoin being sort of this digital sort of like I don't archive. And so all the inscriptions are like these artifacts that, similar to the caves and similar to the graffiti, people will maybe be able to look back and discover and sort of explore the blockchain through inscriptions. Do you think about it that way, or do you think about it differently? Is there something I'm missing, or something that we should add to that?
That's a great analogy. And I do think that at some point in the future, people will perceive these inscriptions. I don't know what they'll think of them. I don't know if they'll even be viewable in the same technology. I don't know what the standards will be, but I do think it'll be interesting, and I think it'll express something, and I think that's pretty beautiful. Similar to graffiti and cave inscriptions and all that, they like convey a message that is isolated. It's like its own unit of expression that doesn't carry the context it has forward in time. It's just like a snapshot.
What do you think Bitcoin native art becomes over the next 5, 10, 20 years?
Oh, I don't know. I couldn't tell you. Depends a lot on the. I feel like if Bitcoin's price goes up a lot, that'll change what's possible a lot. I think as browser native tooling gets better and rendering techniques get better, I think the possibilities will expand. Um, I think if it's still happening, it will continue to get more complex and beautiful for sure.
This is my final question. When people look back at this era of Bitcoin native creation, what do you hope they understand about what you were trying to build?
Hey, you got some hard hitting questions. um, yeah, I think I hope they can see that I was trying to build art that was informed by the constraints and that it's trying to push back against them, and that I was trying to make the biggest, most grandiose, and most enveloping and immersive experiences that were possible given extremely tight constraints. And I think that's the context of the art, and the context of why it's interesting to me is that it's pushing back against those constraints, and it's trying to say, no, this is not just for small things, this is for big things.
MDV, thank you for your time. Thank you for coming on E3 Digital. I will have links, if you're watching this on YouTube, to MDV on X, formerly known as Twitter, also his website, some of the collections that we have mentioned, the SatsFlow links and the ord.net links. And I will also have links to his website. And so outside of those things, is there anywhere else people can find you, they can reach out to you, anything you'd like to
You
leave
can
people with?
We can put a link to my Discord too, if they want to ask a question directly. I'll send that to you.
Perfect. I will have that below as well. Again, thank you for your time, and thank you guys for watching. If you made it this far, please like, share, subscribe, all of that. And look forward to the next time we get to talk.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Take care.